to you.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
New day, new show, a new experience.
Start your day with the news, not views.
We bring you stories that matter
And impact your life.
news that informs and keeps you ahead. From Maximum City, Mumbai,
To the seat of power, Delhi.
NDTV brings you the best breakfast show.
Breakfast news on NDTV, 8 a.m. every day.
I don't care for no songs and proses. I don't care for no sweet boys with roses. I'm too busy, baby, making plans on how to get me one of them manly men. All I want is a touch of love.
I've been reporting on all issues.
Hello and welcome to this very special conversation that we are having on NDTV. I'm in conversation with Professor Larry Summers, who is a former Treasury Secretary and also Chairman Emeritus at Harvard University. Sir, thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to NDTV.
Good to be with you.
So there's a lot of issues to cover and a lot of ground to cover, whether it is the global economy, the Indian economic situation, the global headwinds, and of course technology, and try and pack in all of it given the time constraints as well. But let me start first with the global economy. And just about 2 days before this conversation we are having, World Economic Forum's chief economist outlook came out, and it said that easing inflation and strong global commerce are fueling cautious optimism for recovery, but elevated debt levels are becoming a growing concern in both developed and developing countries. In the backdrop of this, how do you see the global economy in the next couple of quarters, in the next couple of years, and the distinction, if you think you can make, between the developed and developing economies going forward, sir?
I'm guardedly optimistic. The largest economy is the American economy, and I think that a hard landing in the next 6 months is relatively unlikely in the United States. I think a major tilt towards recession in Europe or Japan is also unlikely. Much will depend on the success of the Chinese stimulus programs, and certainly there's more cause for believing that things could turn than there was a week ago. But how large that turn will be and what will happen, I think very much remains to be seen. India, I think, is a bright spot. I think there are very serious challenges in the world's poorest countries, many of whom have been struggling for some time and probably aren't getting as much assistance as they need.
We will come to some of those smaller countries in a bit. There are a lot of them in India's neighborhood as well. But before that, sir, as far as the Indian economic outlook is concerned, positioned and poised to grow at 6.7, 6.8, 6.9% for the next couple of years, fastest growing economy in the world. How do you see and how do you connect the dots for India, let's say about 5 years from now, and the measures that need to be taken to ensure that the growth trajectory remains?
I'm guardedly optimistic. I think that India does have the prospect of, for quite some time, being the greatest growth prospect in the world. I think there's enormous economic energy here, and there have been some really important public investments that have been made. But I think there's an enduring challenge of causing government to function better and in some key sectors like education and health. And there are still many areas, particularly involved with infrastructure, where there's business formation, where the government is probably too much of an impediment to rapid motion and to entrepreneurship.
You think government needs to expedite in terms of bringing down regulation in some of these sectors? Is that what you think?
I think that your prime minister has presided over what in many ways has been an economic miracle. But I think to date, there has been more strength in energizing the economy and performing necessary public sector tasks, ID cards, latrines, improvements in certain aspects of education. Those have been more effective than I think the efforts to unshackle the private sector.
You think?
And the Indian private sector, I fear, remains relatively shackled today.
And if one were to talk about the larger manufacturing story for India to have about, let's say, 25% of GDP coming in from manufacturing, which has been a long-standing aspiration for policymakers, for industry, what do you think should be those top 2-3 measures that need to be taken? Or do you think it's just private sector that really need to do something out of the box?
I think it's really a case for the private sector, and in general, I think given the realities of today's world, I suspect that India's future may lie somewhat more with the service sector and somewhat less with the manufacturing sector than many suppose.
Okay, and so that's in fact a departure from what a lot of people say, because there's an expectation that India could be part of the manufacturing supply lines, and the China +1 story as far as manufacturing is concerned would see India as the biggest beneficiary. You disagree, sir?
There's no question that there will need to be diversification from China, and there's no question that that will provide opportunity for India, and India certainly should work to take advantage of those opportunities. But I think the longer term global trends are going to be towards reduced labor intensity of manufacturing because of technology. And there's going to be a tendency to want to locate production near customers because of a desire to adapt to customers, because more and more labor is going to be able to be carried out by machinery, and if it's going to be machinery, you can be located anywhere.
Right.
So I suspect that there may be some excessive optimism about the broad employment creating potential of manufactured exports.
For
I hope
India.
I'm wrong, for
India.
India. But I fear there may be a little less grounds for optimism about that than many hope for. It may be that, as with agriculture, there comes a time when a sector ceases to be a major and important engine of employment growth. And that may be happening with respect to manufacturing now.
That's a very important insight you're giving, sir, and a departure from what several other thinkers feel. So then a follow-up question on that. Do you think that when India has been trying to really build up on the Make in India, indigenization and Atmanirbhar campaign that is there in terms of manufacturing, do you think there needs to be a bit of a change in direction, change in terms of
I hesitate
goals?
to make a judgment because I'm not close enough to the contours of Indian economic policy to make a confident prescription. But my instinct would be that Indian policymakers would do well to pay very, very close attention to the service sector.
That's an important point, sir. And you mentioned about nearshoring, that is to bring back some of the facilities back home. And I think American economy has been a bit of a beneficiary of that trend in the last 2 years or so. Which brings me to ask about the outlook for the American economy. It's also been a very important aspect of these elections. Your thoughts on the outlook for the US economy and also its bearing on the political climate right now in America?
I'm guardedly optimistic that the economy will continue to grow for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable future is not that long. It takes us perhaps to next spring. I am less certain that the neutral interest rate is as low as the Fed thinks it is. So I'm not sure we're going to see quite as much rate cutting as many people anticipate.
And in the backdrop of not that many rate cuts, what does that mean in terms of global fund flows, the attractiveness of the US economy?
I think the U.S. economy is likely to stay very attractive because U.S. interest rates are likely to stay higher than in most other developed countries. And that may be a source of a little bit of pressure on some emerging markets when people get the sense that there are significant returns to be had in very safe American assets.
And in terms of the impact that the economy is having on the US election, it's pretty much in the last leg of the election. How do you see that? It's expected to be one of the key factors on which the American population could decide.
I think there's been some important shifts in the polling that I have seen towards Vice President Harris, who I think is seen as caring more about people like average Americans than candidate Trump is. But I think what happens with this unemployment rate statistic when it comes out, what happens more generally over the next month, there's some concern about a dock workers strike and what that could mean for prices and availability of goods. And so I think we're going to have to use the traditional phrase, be data dependent and wait and see what the Fed comes up with.
Absolutely. So speaking about
We're getting near the end.
We're getting to the end. Last two questions, which is that, speaking about the American-Indian relationship, one of the biggest highlights in the last couple of weeks, in fact a week or so, has been the semiconductor technical collaboration. Right now it is for national security, but does it open up floodgates for greater tech collaboration, more for startup sector for India?
I think India has enormous capacity with respect to all things digital. And so without knowing the details, I think that it's always hardest to forge your first agreement. And so having forged this agreement, I think there will be more that will build on it. And certainly whether it is reaching Indian consumers all over India, or whether it is producing data centers that can be used as a basis for global industries, I think IT opens enormous potential for India.
Finally, sir, the impact that geopolitical headwinds are set to have on both the Indian economy as well as the global economy, whether you take the Russia-Ukraine conflict or now what is looking like a really aggravated tension in the Middle East.
Very hard to know. I think the interruptions in oil supplies are likely to be considerably less than has traditionally been the case when there's major conflict in the Middle East. And therefore, I'm a little bit more optimistic that this will not be highly disruptive than some of my friends are.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Summers, for taking out the time and speaking to NDTV.
Thank you.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
I don't care for no songs and proses. I don't care for no sweet boys with roses. All I want is a touch of love.
For every news from every part of the country, डाउनलोड कीजिए NDTV ऐप। सिर्फ एक ऐप जो आपको बताता है क्या हो रहा है इन द वर्ल्ड ऑफ बिजनेस, पॉलिटिक्स, स्पोर्ट्स एंड एंटरटेनमेंट। देखना ना भूलें हमारी मूवी युद्रा इन द थिएटर। Read all about Yudra on the NDTV app. So download now.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai. India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
New day, new show, a new experience.
Start your day with the news, not views.
We bring you stories that matter.
And impact your life.
News that informs and keeps you ahead.
From Maximum City, Mumbai,
To the seat of power, Delhi.
NDTV brings you the best breakfast show.
breakfast news on NDTV. 8 a.m. every day.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai. India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
For every news from every part of the country, download कीजिए NDTV ऐप. सिर्फ एक ऐप जो आपको बताता है क्या हो रहा है in the world of business, politics, sports and entertainment. देखना ना भूलें हमारी मूवी युद्रा in the theatre. Read all about Yudra on the NDTV app. So download now.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and
सुनो सुनो सुनो, आपके शहर में आ गया है एनडीटीवी इलेक्शन कार्निवल। एनडीटीवी पूछेगा सवाल, देखिए क्या होता है नेताजी का हाल। अब शहर में आ गया है एनडीटीवी इलेक्शन कार्निवल।
नमस्कार, बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका एक बार फिर से एनडीटीवी का इलेक्शन कार्निवाल। अब हरियाणा में अलग अलग हलकों में होते हुए पहुंच गया है एक बड़े महत्वपूर्ण हलके में। इस बार चर्चा बहुत है, चर्चा है जुलाना की, क्योंकि जुलाना से जो कैंडिडेट हैं, जो प्रत्याशी हैं कांग्रेस और बीजेपी के, खासतौर से कांग्रेस की जो प्रत्याशी हैं, उनको लेकर काफ़ी चर्चाएं हैं। पिछले एक साल से लगातार वो सुर्खियों में भी रही। पहलवान विनेश फोगाट की हम बात कर रहे हैं, वो यहाँ से कांग्रेस की प्रत्याशी हैं। क्या इस बार का जो चुनाव है यहाँ पर, उसमें क्या मुद्दे रहने वाले हैं? क्या सिर्फ चेहरे पर वोट जा रहा है, या लोगों को अभी भी अपनी जो मुश्किलें हैं, जो शिकायतें हैं, जो मुद्दे हैं, क्या सोचकर जनता वोट दे रही है? क्या वोट जाट वर्सेस नॉन जाट, ये कास्ट वो कास्ट पे डिवाइड हो रहा है, या जो लोगों की जो मूलभूत परेशानियां होती हैं जुलाना, उसके लिए अपने मताधिकार का इस्तेमाल 5 तारीख को करने वाला है? तो हम आज जुलाना में कोशिश यही करेंगे समझने की कि जनता सोच क्या रही है। तो जैसा हमेशा होता है, हमारे साथ कुछ मेहमान जुड़ेंगे, उनका तारुफ आपसे कराऊंगा, लेकिन उससे पहले जुलाना की जो जनता है वो हमारे साथ जुड़ी हुई। एक बार बहुत बहुत स्वागत आप सभी का, ताली बजा के अपने लिए ही ज़रा ज़ोरदार स्वागत कर लीजिए। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए, एनडीटीवी पर आने के लिए। चलिए तो शुरुआत करते हैं सवालों का सिलसिला, क्योंकि भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार है। सबसे पहले